Hello, this is Charlie from MMG, and today I'm going to walk you through a simple switcher setup using the MMG AXIS and NDI Router. So I guess let's jump straight into it. So what is NDI Router? So NDI Router is part of the NDI TOOLS software, and it essentially allows you to switch NDIs to an NDI main output. So you can download the NDI tools by going to just look up NDI tools on Google, and it will take you to this page that you can see right here, where you can then choose to download it either for Windows, Mac, whatever your operating system is. In my case, obviously, I'm using Windows. So just download that and then run the installer executable. And then once it's installed, you open it, it will basically ask you to register first of all. So once you've registered, you will then see this page here. And these here are all the different components of NDI tools. So today we're going to be looking at the router. Cool, so here is the current setup of router. Now I've currently got this already set up with a few bits. So basically, once you've set up a few bits on here and then you close it off, it will always reopen with your last configuration. So you don't need to necessarily save or anything. So the idea of NDI router, so these here are your NDI inputs where it says source. And you can right click these and then configure. And what you can then do is you can call it whatever you like. So here I've got this called laptop, and this is basically running a screen capture. This is actually the same screen capture you're seeing right here. So this here, you can pull a list of all different NDI sources. And then here you name it. You can choose a color if you want for the button. That's totally up to you. I'll just keep this all standard for this. You can also change the text color and the text styling. And that is the same for all of the inputs. So for this input here, I've called it cam. We've got a PTZ camera. And then this one here is called VT. This is actually a vMix output. It's because you can run VTs and vMix if you want, but obviously this could be any NDI source you like. So currently these are my three inputs. Now, go over to the next bit where it says destination. So these are the actual NDI outputs of router. So when you first open this, they'll be configured as just 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the NDIs in your network will be called router destination 1, router destination 2, etc. So I've configured this to be like a main screen, for example. And then this one is a digital stage monitor. So essentially, we can now tie these NDI outputs to the actual AXIS SDI outputs. So if we now go back to the AXIS software, I can now, let's say, go on number 3. We decode, obviously, because we want to output the NDI to a screen. So let's say number 3, I've got the SDI connected for the main screens. So we'll just refresh the sources here. You can either turn audio on or off. In this case, I'll probably keep it off as we don't want to send audio to our main screens. And now I'm looking for that main screen because I've called it that. And here you can also see the router dest 3 and 4. So this is what they'll be called as default when you first open the program. But yeah, I've named that as main screen. So I'm going to click that. And then we just click start on that. And then for number 4, we'll be doing the same process. Refresh the sources, except this time I'll be choosing that DSM, Digital Stage Monitor, NDI. And then we'll click start on that. And so now we can go back to the NDI router. And essentially, we've now tied together the NDI outputs of this router to the AXIS. The AXIS is now outputting these two NDI feeds. So an SDI3 on the back of the unit, I've got my main screens plugged in. And then on SDI4 on the back of the unit, I've got my comfort monitor or DSM connected. So now that we're decoding these NDI sources, we can now basically click on these And each of these NDI sources we've configured for each button will be sent directly to these outputs. So let's say on the main screens right now, we've got laptop graphics content. And then on the stage monitor, so in this case, I haven't got a laptop notes input here, but we can very easily add one just by doing this. So let's say we call this PPT notes. And then for argument's sake, let's say this is any NDI source. We can just do display one. But if you were using an actual PowerPoint graphics machine, you could actually use display 1 and 2 and then create an NDI of display 1 for your PowerPoint and then create an NDI of display 2 for your notes. Cool. So now we've added that as PPT notes. So now we can basically click on that to send it to the digital stage monitor. And then when I click back on the main screens, you can see we've still got our laptop or PPT. So we effectively now have control over what is sent to both screens, all over NDI. And just another thing to point out, that the latency on this is very, very good. The actual router software will not add really any noticeable latency to these NDI streams. So if you're, for example, encoding a feed on the axis and then bringing it into the router and putting it out an output, you will get the fast 60 millisecond latency that comes with the MMG AXIS. So it's very good because that also means you can do IMAG with this too. So we can actually put a camera to main screen if we want to, and that will go to that screen in under 80 milliseconds. So you can also add more NDI inputs and outputs and the ability to also store more presets. All you need to do is click this cog here and you'll see a little plus symbol comes up to each of these. So I can, if I want, add another 4 NDI inputs. I can also add 2 more outputs, and you can keep going with this as well. I don't exactly know what the limit is on that, but I'd imagine you would probably hit the limits of your machine you're using before you would hit the limits of the software. And then you can also add more presets, as you can see. Now, when you've clicked the cog and you hit a preset, you can actually configure what that preset is labeled as, the text color, the background color, and text size and style. And to come off this, just simply click the cog again to come back to your main router user interface. Now, to store presets, you just need to click store and then click the number that associates. And to load a preset, you just click that as well. So I've now stored this preset on 1. So if I now want to change something, so let's say we get rid of this PPT notes and just call this 4, close there. Now, as you can see, if I click 1, it loads the preset. But that is really all there is to NDI router. And obviously you can tie up to 4 outputs to all 4 of these SDI ports if you would want to. And equally, you can encode on the axis and also bring those encoded feeds into the NDI inputs of the router setup. So that's the simple setup for switching for the MMG AXIS and NDI router. It is a very reliable and easy switcher for most small level productions and live events.